That's it. March 2nd, 2026. We are in the 5th year, and this is day 7 since the start of the full-scale invasion. A warm welcome. I greet you to the Situation Report. In today's report, we see mutual attacks and territorial gains, hits on important facilities, and complaints within the Russian army. So, as always, it will be very interesting and at times quite entertaining. By the way, if you are one of the viewers who has the ability to hype up videos, then go ahead and do it. That really has a huge impact on the algorithm. Not every viewer can do that. Only some viewers can do that, those whom YouTube randomly selects. And as we can already see here in the background, things like this can have a big impact, which of course benefits the channel a lot. So don't hold back when you see that. I think you can hype up videos up to 3 times a month. February ended quite remarkably. For the first time in a long while, Russia has not recorded any territorial gains overall. The Ukrainian gains on the southern front are likely to at least mathematically surpass the smaller Russian advances on other sections of the front in February, even if only by a small margin. For the first time since the Kursk offensive, Ukraine has regained more territory in a single month than Russia was able to capture along the entire front during the same period. For the 3 winter months, Sefatzersky estimates Russian losses at a total of 92,850, killed and wounded, averaging 1,031 per day. Nevertheless, it should be noted that in most sections of the front, Russian forces formally still hold the initiative. However, without operational breakthroughs or significant territorial gains, as we have seen in recent months. The fighting on both sides is mostly tactical in nature. 3 Russian elevated positions, especially in the direction of the Ukrainian local offensive, namely Hill 134, 167, and Hill 161, continue to block deeper Ukrainian advances. We remember that the Ukrainians are trying to reach this old line again. There is a fairly large anti-tank trench there. There is also said to be an anti-tank barrier here, as well as a Dragon's Teeth line, and the Ukrainians lost these positions in September. They are now trying to push the Russians back far enough so that they can retake and hold these positions. But there's no talk of a rapid advance here. We do see that they were able to capture some villages, but they have hardly made any further progress since then. Especially Hill 134, which is this one here near Rivne. It's extremely strong for the Russians. Hill 134, that's this one here. Hill 134, and that's this one here, Rivne. And that's the one. Hill 134, that's the one near Rivne. We will probably have the geolocations in these villages tomorrow, or the day after at the latest if they took place there. Here, it should be mainly the 110th. The mechanized brigade did most of the work. As I said, the 95th is attacking the hill from the northeast side. The Russian defensive lines are mainly oriented towards the northeast. Meanwhile, the 110th brigade is attacking here more or less from the rear and also near a body of water. While they confirmed that the Ukrainians were able to gain a foothold here, we can see a small attempt to bypass these 2 villages here. And you know what follows when Hill 134 has been captured. Because if this hill is under Ukrainian control, it opens the way to Uspanivka. And Uspanivka is basically the gateway to the old positions. On the Russian side, the army within the occupied Ukraine consists of professional soldiers, volunteers who are also called contract soldiers, and mobilized forces. Because at the beginning of the war, there was a large partial mobilization in which around 350,000 men were conscripted against their will to make up for the losses at the front in a poorly calculated war. Initially, they were seen as a separate group within the Russian strike forces. There were basically those who volunteered, there were those who already had a relationship with the Ministry of Defense before, meaning a contractual relationship. And then, of course, there were those who were conscripted, and they were also treated as a separate group. They had their own regiments. They had their own battalions, into which they were integrated, had their own platoons, and were not spread out across all the strike forces. Many of them have been fighting since then without real rotation. They are also treated more or less as second class, without a clear prospect of discharge. Now, even military bloggers close to the system report that nearly all remaining mobilized soldiers have been moved to regular fixed-term contracts. The message, as all too often has been clear, sign the contract or die in the next assault. This means that, in effect, the message to the mobilized is often clear, because anyone who signs a contract loses any prospect of automatic demobilization after the end of the war. Currently, contract soldiers, regardless of how long their contract lasts, can have their contracts unilaterally extended by the Ministry of Defense. But this does not apply to the mobilized soldiers from the first months of the war. Either the new recruits are no longer sufficient in quantity and quality, or the losses are accumulating faster than they can be integrated. That is a question. Losses are accumulating. Can be integrated. Because if you keep telling your people for ages that the war is going very, very well, and that theoretically, by tomorrow, you could already be in Kiev, or even better, in Berlin, but after 1,469 days, you would have to mobilize again. Then, my dear viewers, then I think even the fools will realize that things might not be going so well after all, and that would be a very, very big problem for the Kremlin. In the Brüderl-Pohle area, a rather tough and costly positional battle has been going on since early February 2026 for Ves near Tersa, about 10 kilometers almost northwest of the city, this place up here. Forces of the Russian Fifth Army, that is, the Vostok Group, specifically elements of the 127th. Motorized Rifle Division, which is represented here by the 114th Rifle Regiment and the 60th. Motorized Rifle Brigade, which is positioned a bit further to the southwest, are trying to break through the defenses of the Ukrainian 5th Assault Brigade, which is supported by the 1st Battalion of the 225th Assault Regiment. The location is, of course, not a random hotspot. It is part of the Ukrainian defense system, running along the river and securing the supply routes located to the north. And these are precisely the most important rear supply routes of the 20th Corps in the Brüderl-Pohle area. Accordingly, the expansion began early. As early as September the 2022, the first field fortifications were constructed. In the spring of 2024, reinforced strongpoints were established in the Krynichna area and to the northeast of it. South of the town, a continuous anti-tank ditch was built, which we can also see here on the map, extending to the northern edge of Shalini. Later, it was reinforced with dragons, teeth, and wire obstacles. In the surrounding forest strips, a dense network of covered earth bunkers and infantry positions was likely established as well. However, the Russian offensive began with the capture of Svatiopetrivka, which is the town up here on the eastern outskirts, right in front of the southern section of the Ukrainian anti-tank ditch, which runs exactly along here. Massive airstrikes with glide bombs, heavy cannon and rocket shelling, artillery fire, and TOS thermobaric munitions preceded this. This fire support still accompanies the attacks to this day. The fighting is actually concentrated along two axes. In the north, in the area of elevation 153, the 114th Motorized Rifle Regiment is attacking. To the south, forces of the 60th are trying to advance. The brigade is gradually advancing westward along the valley and pushing back units of the 225th Assault Regiment. In recent days, the village of Hirka has fallen into Russian hands. As we can also see here on the map, we also have Russian vehicles at the blue pins. The battle clearly has the character of a war of attrition. Despite heavy fire density and continuous attacks, the territorial gains are limited and fiercely contested. Here is a fortified junction designed for defense. Accordingly, the attempt to break through these positions is slow and costly. An end to the fighting seems distant, and the situation is like that of the Ukrainians previously mentioned, but reversed. In Novorossiysk on the Black Sea, there were several explosions, after which an oil terminal caught fire. The area, including parts of the port infrastructure, was apparently affected by the fires. Russian channels are simultaneously reporting active Ukrainian drones in the area and confirming corresponding flight movements. The video here also shows a hit. By the way, Novorossiysk is not just any port, but a central hub for Russian energy exports, as well as for military and logistical operations in the Black Sea. Since oil prices are currently rising due to the fighting in Iran, Russia would theoretically benefit from this, which is why we will probably see more frequent Ukrainian attacks on oil facilities in the near future. Hits in this area therefore have a double effect: economically, by disrupting oil transshipment, and operationally, by putting strain on the port and supply infrastructure. But let's stay with the same port for now. In satellite images from February 11th, the barriers are still clearly visible, which the Russians erected after the attack on a Kilo-class submarine by an underwater drone. But in the images from February 28th, these barriers are completely gone again. The water surface in front of the affected section of the port is clear again. Such floating blockades are primarily used to make attacks with marine drones on ships, berths, or critical infrastructure like oil terminals more difficult. Their removal can have various reasons: restructuring of security, relocation of ships to other locations, technical problems, or simply the assessment that the immediate threat level is lower than expected. Thanks to all subscribers, channel members, and the Algo crew, especially Lieutenant Colonel Renneke, Scylla, Dietrich, Freddy, and Mehrhofer. Please subscribe, like, and comment. See you in the next daily report.